Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. This is Dom. I'm with Samantha Hawes tonight of the show Ghost Hunters. I'm very happy, Samantha, to have you on the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. You know that I'm very happy. First of all, thank you for taking the time to do it.
Oh, no, anytime.
Very happy. And, people were introduced to you a few years ago on the show, but, tell me more about the backstory of Samantha Hawes, the paranormal investigator.
Well, it's definitely something that I've been doing much longer than people have seen me on the show, and that seems to be a common misconception that I just, woke up one day and said, hey, I want to be on TV, I want to be a paranormal investigator. It's definitely something that I've worked hard to do for years, and I've obviously been around this since I was very little and exposed to things and given the knowledge that I needed. So, as I became a preteen and a teenager, it was something that I felt comfortable and very enthusiastic about, reaching into and starting and doing my research. And, it was years of just, going over my own evidence and showing it to Dad and showing it to Steve and everyone and being like, hey, listen, this is what I caught, this is where I was, this is what I was doing. And there was a lot of training that went into it. So it's not something that I just, 2 seasons ago now said, hey guys, can I be on the show with you? Can I come hang out? It was something that I certainly worked very hard to do.
I totally agree with you. And the fact, that, like you said, you grew up, I had Alexandra Alzer on my podcast about a year ago, and her father, and also kind of like the pioneer of the paranormal field. But Jason, your father, is the pioneer in a different way because, he's the one that brought the paranormal. I would say that we could do it. People could go out there and help people. So they kind of, the pioneer, the first TV show to ever do that. And even today, 10 years later, they're still sticking to what they did in the first place, which is kind of like helping people.
Yeah, it's very important to us that, obviously we know there are quite a few different paranormal shows on, and every show is very much its own. They're all very different, and some people like the way the other shows go. People prefer ours sometimes. Our method is very much the utmost respect. We go in utmost respect, just we know the story, we know the claims, but we're not going to let that drive our findings. We go in very level-headed. We ask the questions we always ask. We approach it. If we think there might be a child, we will approach it in a more playful manner than we would an adult. But it's always respect, and it's always just get the answers, and if they're there and they're given to us, we'll bring them. But we're not going to go in saying, oh, we think this place is haunted. No matter what, we think this place is haunted if we don't have the evidence. We're going to show you what we caught, and sometimes, sadly, there are places and people have experiences all day long, and we'll walk in for 2 nights straight and get nothing. Because what's there isn't comfortable with us. So we're going to say, hey, listen, your personal experiences are amazing. Sadly, we didn't get anything. And that's just the way it is.
And it's true. It's true because that's the first thing you realize when you start investigating it, that most of the time it's not on demand. You just don't walk into a house and say, hey, we're here, let's talk. If it was this easy, everybody would be a paranormal investigator. And as a matter of fact, they wouldn't need us, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of times, especially when dealing with, residential cases, if there is something there, this family is experiencing it all the time and it's seeing it all the time because it's something that's very comfortable with the family and it knows the family and it knows how to interact. And you put 6, strangers in a house or so for 2 nights straight just saying, hey, let us know who you are and do this for us and tell us you're here. It's watching from afar saying, hey, no way. I don't know you. And we have to, that's why we approach it with such respect, because this is a person. This is, this at one point was a human being, and this is, the intelligence, and it's someone's soul, and if they don't want to talk to us, then that's their own choice.
Exactly. Like you said, the 2 words, the big words that to me make all the difference in the world is respect and, like going out there, and showing respect and no provoking.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's one thing I don't do. There's no sense in it. There's no, why am I going to trick something into talking to me? I mean, I wanted to talk to me respectfully and to deal with me respectfully, so that's how I'm going to deal with it.
Exactly. And, as a paranormal investigator, like I said, the first thing you have to realize is that most of the time you're sitting in a cold spot, on your butt, uncomfortable, and you get nothing for hours on end. Then you get something. Or sometimes you realize you caught something on the audio recorder just back home. So it's not always instantaneous. It's not something that it's always you perceive right away. If you're going with the ghost box, sometimes you'll catch it right away. But if you do EVP sessions, if you don't do live EVP sessions, sometimes you'll catch the stuff back when you review the evidence. So it's a lot of hard work. And like you said, you could be there for 2 nights in a row, and you can catch 1, 2, 3, or 4 things. But the point is that the fact that you go out there and you try to help those people and you try to piece the puzzle together is what matters to me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're very right, because we don't use, just on the show, we don't use ghost boxes, and we don't do live EVP recordings. So we're investigating these places. I know people watch the show and they say, you guys were only in a location for 45 minutes. How did you catch anything? There are 2 nights of investigations for a location. We start every night at dark, and we go until sunrise, and it goes for 2 nights straight. And then we all take our own evidence home. So, we'll just split it up among everybody, and, I may take 8 to 12 hours of stuff home, depending on how long I was out personally investigating. So, now I've investigated for 24 hours straight, and now I'll go home and go over my evidence for another 12. And it might not be for that final hour of evidence review that I get, just a faint word, just something small on the recorder to bring back. And it really is. It's a lot of just quiet and a lot of paying attention. And it's not, we're not going in these places and screaming and provoking and running out. And, it's not like that. It's a lot of quiet walking and listening and paying attention to every sound and who's making it, and not finding something till the very end sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing. I did once a video on my channel that was like pitch black in the basement at that haunted mansion, and I was just listening. I heard footsteps. I heard a lot of things that I didn't catch on camera, but I said at one point, maybe after 2 minutes, says something you don't see on paranormal TV shows. It's total silence, and it's something that is very important also to realize that when you do the editing of the show, sometimes you seem like the questions are coming very fast, but in reality, you leave a lot of space between the question. Is just that you have to
there's definitely a lot of space, and that's, people always say, that's a lot of our Twitter comments, you guys don't stop talking long enough to hear. Okay, each of our runs tend to be at least a few hours. So if I go out with KJ, we're out 2 to 3 hours together, and then we'll swap and we'll go, another team will go. That's how it is. So if you're seeing, KJ and I investigating for 2 minutes on the episode, and we've asked, 4 or 5 questions, and then you're seeing KJ and Dustin go out, and they're asking 4 or 5 questions. You have to say these 5 questions were asked in a range of probably like 2 hours. And, there's a lot of quiet time, and there's a lot of sitting and just studying and just thinking and, just offering anything, whatever they want to do. They want to talk, they want to interact. There's a lot of quiet and waiting for them to give us the cue that they do want to communicate.
That's awesome. When you did a few years ago, the live Halloween investigation, then you would see how it was. And like I told you before the podcast, my first experiences in the U.S. were, luckily enough for me, was with Tap's home team. Ken DaCosta was there also with Rise Up Paranormal, Joe Chin, Christine Dons, and I was able to learn from experienced veterans of the paranormal field. And I was just in the back listening and watching and learning, and that's when I realized it's a lot of work, a lot more tagging everything on your EVP sessions, making sure the cameras are the right angle, making sure you're totally aware of the lights coming through the windows. Like the street is right there, so the cars passing by will send light. So you have to be aware of all those details during an investigation, which is something you don't realize when you watch the TV show. But there's so much work to do before you actually even start investigating, right?
Yeah, there is. I'm sure we travel with probably quite a bit more equipment than than most small teams, and I know that because I do personally do go out with a tap home team when I'm local and I'm home. I'll send team manager Tracy a message and say, hey, listen, you guys, are you jam packed with residential cases? Do you need any help? Do you need anything? And if she has somewhere that she needs help, she's more than willing to have an extra hand. And I've learned that, sadly, not everyone has the ability to have all of the cameras that we have and things on the show. But we have quite a few. Our average setup on a case is we set up the DVR, we set up our computer, we set up about 8 cameras, usually stationary cameras on tripods. We set up, probably 2 or 3 stationary GoPro cameras. We have wireless microphones placed in rooms. Any room that has a claim gets something. Something gets put in that room. If it's, they just hear a voice in that room, but they don't see something, it would just be, the wireless microphone setup would go in there. But, we do a lot of setup. It's 2-3 hours of just setting cameras and going back and asking Dave, hey, Dave, is this the angle that looks great? Let's go back over the claim. Is this where it was? Is this how it happened? Let's, get the best shot, the best luck that we have to get something. Let's get that. And because, we're only there for 2 nights, and we want to have the experiences that people who are there all the time have. So we try to, get the best bet that that's going to happen.
Exactly. And, as I watched the last season of Ghost Hunters, as a paranormal investigator, that's stuff that I noticed is the chemistry between investigators. Some things you can't, you can buy, and some things you can't. You can only develop through time. Like the best example being Steve and Tango together. Yeah. They're like 2 brothers, and like me and Steve, it's like you just have that feeling that you don't have to say anything. You know what your partner is going to do. But
it's definitely the chemistry. It's great. It's a big part of making it work, and I'm lucky enough. Obviously, there's my dad, and we're 2 peas in a pod. We're the same person. But then there's Steve, and Steve's been around since the beginning. I call Steve Uncle Steve. There's Dave, who's practically just been the big brother for the last 10 years. There's KJ, who has been friends with my father since high school, so I've always known him. Dustin's been around forever. So, these are people that I've grown up with. And, I got married last year, and these are people that were, front row at my wedding. This is family. So it's not, you see other shows where people are put together, and they're formed for a television show. And I think that shows when you watch those shows. The people don't have the same chemistry as, when I go out with somebody who I consider my uncle, and we're sitting and hanging out and investigating a building, or somebody who I pretty much consider, an older brother, we're sitting there just trying to, enjoy these locations and then get these things to happen. I think that the energy we put out as a team is a great help.
It really is. And the fact that this season, Dustin came back on the show, and you came back on the show, gave a new energy to the show. I think it changed the atmosphere, and the chemistry between you and Dustin is amazing. I just saw it straight from the start. Dustin told me last year when we were in Salem that he enjoyed investigating with you, and you were very level-headed, very calm, and it's as if you were born to do this.
Yeah, Dustin's great. Dustin actually texted me late the other night. He was sending me some. And there's a really cool farm locally to us that has turkeys that get dyed rainbow colors for the fall, like hot pink and yellow. And he was sending it to me. He was so excited. So that's what I knew. We're family. We text each other all the time. We don't see each other for a week. We're texting each other. What are you guys doing? Like, how are you? How's life? Because that's what would happen even if we didn't film together. We would still be talking to each other on a regular basis.
Yes, Dustin, I've said it before, way before. Dustin is my favorite guy in the paranormal field. Dustin and Brian Kano, both of them. Dustin is, you cannot not love Dustin. It's impossible. You see his lectures at paranormal conventions, and he speaks from the heart, and and he changed my way of seeing things. I remember years ago in Gettysburg saying that paranormal investigating made him a better person, because it made him realize that what you do in this life affects what happens to you in the afterlife. And that was very deep. That really changed me as a person, not just an investigator. So I'm sure that Dustin, over the course of your life, has had the same effect, I'm pretty sure, on you.
Oh, I mean, he's an amazing person. He's hands down one of the most positive, thankful human beings that I know. I mean, truthfully, that I know. It doesn't matter how your day's going. He'll tell you something. He's got a quote. He's got a song. He's got something that is going to change it around. So, I mean, he's a great person to have around and to have involved in your life in one way or another.
You know, you can, doing paranormal investigation, I'm sure it's the same thing for you. You can sense people, you can read people very easily. And when you see Dustin, you see the light around him, it just shines, you know, that you know.
When you see Dustin, a bunch of, like, Christmas carols start playing. I think, like, you know, you see, like, dancing pumpkin pies and stuff. Like, those are things Dustin reminds me of.
He's amazing. And answering to people on Twitter, on direct messages, just shows that you're not out there just trying to look good. You know, you're out there to help people. And to me, it's a TAPS mentality. You know, it's not about showing off. It's not about going out there saying we got the best evidence. Oh, we got this crazy thing. It's about helping the people, and not only helping the people who are stuck with paranormal activity in their home or in their office, or it's helping those spirits at the same time. So it's a delicate balance between doing both, you know, because sometimes when you go on an investigation, I always say there's two ways to do an investigation. If the owners want to get rid of whatever is in the house, that is different than if people just want to know, you know, what is going on. And that's why I love about Jason when he always asks, what do you want us to do? You know, why are you asking for us to come here? You know, because it changes everything about the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to sound biased. I mean, but that's what, as far as the paranormal goes, that's what gives. I mean, I give my father the utmost 100% respect because, I mean, TAPS wasn't formed for a television show. Nobody came to my dad and said, "Hey, we want to make a paranormal television show. Do you want to put together a paranormal group?" Like, that's not what happened. TAPS was around for years. It was around for years and years and years, and people were getting help every weekend. I mean, there was a website. They were known locally. They'd gone through different names and TAPS, but people knew them and people trusted them. And they were called into locations. And eventually, a film company came along and said, "Hey, listen, this is what we want to do. We want to film you guys." And I mean, Dad made it very clear. He said, "You know, you can film us. You can come with us and you can film us, but listen, these are families that we're taking care of, and, you know, you need to take a step back. You can turn your cameras on if the family gives permission, and you can watch what we do, but that's really all that you do." I mean, you don't give us, you know, any input on what you want to see happen. You don't, and that's still what happens to this day. I mean, we show up to locations. Dad goes in and meets the client, and then we set up, and nobody says, "Hey, you know, why don't you guys go investigate this spot and see what happens?" We investigate what we want to investigate when we want to do it. We approach it the way we want to. And, a cameraman, we have one cameraman per team. And when we start walking, he just presses the on button on his camera. I mean, that's how it's handled. And that's the thing. When the show ends, we're still going to be handling everything the same way we do. We're still going to be in these houses. We're still going to be in these, locations that ask us to come in and ask for help because that's the way it's always been.
And what I love about the show also, to me, because I've been up and down on the subject so many times, you know, when I started very little equipment. You know, I had my ghost box, my audio recorder, my camera, and my key-to-meter. That was about it. And then, you know, as you progress, you know, you start buying more equipment and you start doing, I think, the biggest mistake that you can do, which is to rely too much on your equipment and not relying on what I think is the best paranormal equipment that we have, which is ourselves. Yeah. And that's what you guys do. You know, you don't rely on too much equipment. You know, you go very light on those locations. And sometimes you're just walking. You know, you're just walking and you're catching stuff that if you go out there with 17 different cameras, millimeters, REM pods, and so much stuff that sometimes, you know, I think to a spirit, especially in a fort or in a very old home, they'll be like, what the heck is that? You know?
Yeah. Well, the problem, we always do introduce the equipment we have, even when it's just a recorder. So you're very right. I mean, what happens is you end up paying attention to your equipment. You don't pay attention to what's happening around you. And I mean, a lot of times people say, you know, they're watching the show and they say, "Oh, why didn't your cameraman turn, you know, to what you guys saw?" Well, how was he supposed to know we were going to see it? I mean, there's a lot. there's one cameraman, and he's trying to film us. He doesn't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I mean, it's very much, a lot of it is just intuition. A lot of it is, walking down a hallway, and say KJ says to me, or I say to Dustin, hey, I really feel like we should sit in this room for a little bit. Like, I feel like this is a good spot to sit, and you just have to sometimes, trust your gut, and sometimes nothing happens at all. But, luckily there have been times where we're just in the right spot at the right time. And, I mean, your intuition does, I think, play a much larger role than any equipment that you could have. Not that equipment's not amazing to have, but you definitely don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, if you start getting evidence and then it dies down a little bit, and then you pick up the equipment to validate what you caught or what you felt, that's great, But if you just rely on the equipment, then you can basically put the equipment out there and leave and, film for the whole night. And that's the other thing about filming with infrared is if you can't put 50 cameras, because we did the mistakes on a few occasions, because they will, interfere with each other. If you have a camera shooting in front of another camera, the infrared will go.
Yeah.
So that's something else that, unless you've done it, you don't realize that you can't film the whole room. It's almost impossible.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I very much like to, when I walk in, I mean, I tend to go a little light with my equipment. I'll either have, like a handheld camera or a recorder, just depending on pretty much on what the claims are. I mean, if they've never seen an apparition or anything, it's all voices, it's all sounds, I'm much more to just go with a recorder. But I mean, I put mine down. I tend to walk in a room and I'll find a good, center spot, and I'll put my recorder and my camera down, and I'll say, hey, this is me in such room, and this is where I'm putting my piece of equipment, just so everyone knows that's where it was, and that's in case they heard anything. But and I'll just leave it, because I don't want it to play a role in how I'm moving and how I'm interacting and how I'm talking. I'll just leave it, and I'll just let it do its thing, and I introduce the equipment always. I know they don't usually show that on television, but I'll always say, hey, listen, this might look really, really funny. It's got crazy lights and, it's blinking and it's doing this, but hey, listen, it'll catch your voice or it'll take your picture if you wanted to. Just feel free to play with it, and I leave it.
That's amazing, and we had a question, Bernina, on Twitter, telling you, my daughter, Allie, really looks up to Samantha, and she was wondering if you always wanted to be a paranormal investigator.
Hi, Ellie. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do have multiple college degrees. I mean, I have a history degree, and I have a teaching degree. And there's a lot of other jobs that I've pursued and I've done, but paranormal investigating is always something I've done on the side. No matter what, it's always something I've been doing and I've been exposed to. So when I was given the opportunity to take my history degree and put it towards the show and do a lot of the historical research that I love to do, I mean, doing it for the show was something I decided to take on full time. And I mean, up until just, not too long ago, I was actually working other jobs in filming, but the schedule got a little crazy and my kids were missing me a lot. So, I mean, it just turned into just paranormal investigating for a while, and I love it. I love it so much.
And it shows. The fact that we talked earlier before the podcast about it, but it's very important to have the history of when you do paranormal investigation, especially in New England, because it's so old, there's three, like we talked about in Rhode Island, Payne House in Coventry, the house is over 300 years old. So when you investigate a place like this, it's important to have somebody on my team. I'm lucky we have MJ, but to have somebody like you that can dig, no pun intended, the history of the place where you go investigate. And so if a name comes up during the investigation, then you can connect the dots and maybe go like, hey, Steve, this is the name you just caught on your EVP, was the owner of the house in 18-something, whatever. So it's very important to know the history and where the location of the land and the story, not the neighborhood sometimes, could be influenced.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, definitely, we do a lot of historical research when we get the location. Not into like claims or anything like that, but we do, how long has it been there? Is there anything local that we should know about? Is there a lot of activity happening in the area? Anything that we should know about? Anything down to what is the building made out of? I mean, is it made? Because limestone and things are very good conductors of energy. So it's always good to know what we're walking into. What kind of energy are we already walking into, never mind paranormal. But then there have been cases where names have come up in, our EVPs or in, our REM pod conversations, and it's reacting to a name, but it's not a name that you were ever told that this family has any connection to. And when I'm given that, then I can go back and I can look at your genealogy, and I can look at ancestry websites, and I can pull up information of somebody, who lived in that spot years ago or had some connection down the line. It's really great to know some stuff beforehand, and it's even more amazing when you can come up with answers afterwards.
Oh, that's true. And sometimes do follow-up investigations. There's some case, sometimes you have to go back a few times. And
we do. We do a lot of follow-up. People seem to think that every investigation we do is shown on television, which is, again, just a misconception. We film a lot, but there are a lot of locations that don't want to be on TV. There are people that want you to come in and they don't want to be on television. They want the privacy, and that's definitely something that people need to take into consideration. Our only investigations aren't that you're seeing on television.
Exact, because some people are, sometimes afraid, especially here in Canada, where the paranormal is not as popular as it is in the United States. Over here, when we do private homes, people are always, we never will ever show a clip on Facebook or Twitter or on YouTube or whatever of our private home investigations. But like I told you earlier, we had, for the first time ever, I had that smell of rotten eggs during an investigation this weekend. And it's something that it's probably my worst sense. I got good ears and I can talk. But I never smelled anything before. And this time around, it was coming and going. It had nothing to do with the plumbing of the house. And it was and when the smell was coming out, that rotten egg smell, the activity would just spike, and then when it would dissipate, it would stop. So that was very, very weird, and it kind of shook me up, because I was like, my goodness, it was the first time for everything, but to me, that was something that I was not prepared for, and in a good way, because you have to be prepared for anything in investigation. And tell me more about the experiences you've had, with that particular smell during investigations.
Well, I personally haven't been on any known demonic investigations where that smell has been relevant. I know they say a lot of times it goes hand in hand. There have been locations where I have smelled sulfur, but it's all been natural. It's all been from the plumbing. It's all been from, things happening underneath the building. And, so it really doesn't play any role in that. But definitely they say, oh, hey, we saw sulfur in the building, and we know that this is what it goes along with. Well, no, it's a natural sulfur smell, and no worries, nothing bad is happening here, and you've never experienced anything bad. But I've been on cases where there weren't demonic happenings. When things like that tend to happen, that's something that Dad makes sure that I'm safely, not involved with. I think that's just his goal. But he does take care of a lot of private cases where there are demonic happenings. So I don't know if he's had any experiences with that smell going hand in hand, but I personally haven't.
Yeah, me this weekend, I'm not sure it added. It was not demonic, but it felt like an angry spirit, and it felt very aggressive, and it felt aggressive towards the owner of the house, which to me is the worst case scenario. That's why we stayed overnight, and we kept investigating, because we wanted to make sure it was gone. And we called a friend, who specializes in cases like this. And that's one thing, as an investigator, not be afraid, to ask for help. I called one of my good friends, Glenn Williams, that evening, and I was like, Glenn, I need your help, brother. And that's something, that, I say we're the paranormal family. Some people don't believe in it, but I do believe in it, and that we're a para family, and that we're out there to help each other. And with TAPS, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll never understand is people when your paranormal team's trying to one-up one another. That's one thing I'll never understand, because, even if you don't approach things, the same way as the, TAPS team or the TAPS family team, I would just really hope that everybody is just trying to approach everything with the utmost respect and just trying to get the answers that need to be given. And I hear so much, teams fighting back and forth, and this is what they caught on this team, but this team didn't catch, and who's right and who's wrong. I mean, it just doesn't make much sense. I mean, everybody has different experiences. You watch television shows where we go to locations that other teams have gone to on other television shows, and we've had completely different experiences.
Yeah, that's true.
But we approach them in different ways. So apparently something was willing to, communicate in the other person's way, or was willing to communicate in our way. So, I mean, it's just the way it is, and I don't personally have any hostile feelings towards any other paranormal team, but I know there are people that don't appreciate the way that we approach it.
Exactly, because that something that I realized through the years is that whatever you bring with you will change the atmosphere and will change the interactions you have with the spirits in the same way it would with people. If you do a podcast with a person and you're rude, then you can expect that the person after a while to start being rude with you, because it just goes both ways. But when you do a paranormal investigation in a way that is respectful and that they feel you're trying to help, because I always said, a spirit probably can sense you from miles away. If you're out there saying, I'm here to help, but deep down you're not, they can sense it. I don't think you can hide your feelings or your emotions from a spirit. In my opinion, you have to be like an open book, and you have to be doing it for the good reasons if you want to have the good results.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, like I said, there are places that I know other teams have gone to, and they've had different experiences than us, like very, very different. And, we approached it a little quieter in manner, and we approached it a little more, hey, do you want to talk to us? Because we're here and we want to talk. Whereas, maybe they approached it in a more, provoking way. And that made what they experienced angry and mean, but what we experienced wasn't. It wasn't mean at all. And, I mean, that's why you have to remember these are people. Like, these are people, too, and you need to respect them. You wouldn't walk into someone's house and start calling them names and, threatening them to come out and hit you and touch you and pull your hair. I mean, that's not something you would do.
Exactly.
You walk in and say, listen, this is my name, and I know you don't know me, but I'd really like to meet you, and I'd really like to talk. So, I mean, depending on how you approach it is completely different outcome. But, I mean, there are some cases that need to be approached with force. They do, because these are rude spirits themselves. But, I mean, that's not usually the case.
That's true. And what is the one time, during your years investigating, that, we've had, I wouldn't say scared, but I would say shaken. I think it's the right word to describe what happens when something, takes us out of our comfort zone. We're shaken to the core.
I mean, there was a new episode aired last night, our season finale. And I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but there's a moment where I jump. And, I mean, there were a lot of tweaks going on because I jumped and KJ laughed and we were investigating together. And people said, oh, you jumped. Like, I'm surprised you didn't run. And you have to understand, I was just standing in the same spot for, you saw it for 30 seconds, but I was just standing in that same spot for like an hour. And there was a really loud bang, not a foot away from me. Of course I jumped. It's been quiet. There's nobody. I mean, you're not expecting it. It was like 3:30 in the morning, and I was exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just these are things that shake you up a little bit.
But Sam, that's exactly what I think. That sometimes a lot of people will be like, well, around 3. That's when it gets more active. Yeah, maybe, but at the same time, you're so tired at 3 a.m. because sometimes you start investigating at 5:30, sometimes 8. But when you get to 3:30, you've been investigating for 8 to 12 hours. So first of all, you're tired, you're emotionally, and people have no idea how much concentration it takes to investigate. How much it takes out of you. I remember the movie The Conjuring. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but at one point, Lauren says, every investigation takes a toll on me. It takes a little piece of me. Every investigation. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that every investigation, I always play, the song from Guard Books, I'm much too young to feel this damn old. and I feel like, it's true, it makes us feel older than we are, and it takes a toll on us. It's very, very tough, very tough. And at 3:30,
It's definitely, I mean, you give a lot of energy. And sometimes, I mean, there are times where it's because what's in the room needs your energy. But, I mean, it's in the same sense. I mean, usually when we investigate, we start at, we'll get there, early evening so that we can see the place in daylight and Dad can talk to the client and get the full story of the claims. So sometimes while they've emailed us things that have happened and things that happened since. So, I mean, they refresh us. They tell us, hey, this is it. We get a tour. We decide where we're setting up our cameras. And then we investigate until sunrise, 4:30 in the morning. So, I mean, then we're up all the next day because, I mean, it's daytime and you have trouble sleeping and adjusting, and then you investigate again. So we get to that second night at 4 in the morning, and we've been going for 36 hours. And, I mean, it's exhausting. And then it's going over the evidence, and it takes a toll. Whether or not you find something or not, I mean, it takes a toll when you're tired. And, yes, I did jump this week on an episode because I was exhausted, and it startled me.
I'm going to get it because now Ghost Hunters in Canada, they used to be on OLN, and now they switched to Travel Channel. So I think that the season finale here in Canada will be tomorrow night. So I can't wait to watch it because
you will see it.
I can't wait because this season, like I said before, I think the energy in the team has changed a lot. With the new people coming in, I think the fact that you make a lot of a switch, but see you and Dustin investigate together is awesome. Have you had a chance to investigate with your dad, with Jason, a lot during this season, or?
We investigate together every case. I investigate. With pretty much every person, every case, we all do. We all take turns going and investigating with everybody. But because, I mean, you never know what team's going to give off the right energy, is going to get the right answers, and what's going to make that spirit feel comfortable enough to talk. So we try every combination. But, I mean, sometimes things just don't make the cut. And a lot of people say, I hate that you don't investigate with your dad anymore. Well, I did, but, hey, KJ and Dustin had a really good experience here, and Dad and I didn't. We kind of sat quiet for 2 hours and didn't have much. So, I mean, sometimes things just don't get shown because we're only given, a 45 minutes to show you a week.
Exact. And then with the replays and everything and the interviews, so you're basically seeing 20-25 minutes of investigation of, like you said, maybe 16 hours with 4 teams. So you're looking at 35 to 40 hours of investigation thrown into 20 minutes. So
Yeah, I mean, it's insane what they need to fit in an hour. And everybody always says, we wish the episodes are longer. We do too, because there's so much more that you don't see happen. But, I mean, if we showed you everything, you'd just sit at your television for 2 days straight, and 3/4 of it would be quiet and us sitting in the dark trying not to fall asleep. I mean, that's what 4 a.m. rolls around, and you're taking an energy drink to try to make it through the hour to sunrise, and then the cleanup of all the equipment.
Exactly. So we're just going to have to take a 1-minute break and be back for the last 20 minutes of the podcast with Samantha. There's 2 places you guys investigated that we're going to talk about. I told you before the podcast that are very dear to me. So we'll be back in a minute. So stay with us.